Hello, Stephen Schaub here, leader of the Viva la Revolution 2.0 here on YouTube, and today we are talking about everything CineStill BwXX or Eastman Double X motion picture film. All the images you're going to see today are all in 120 format and were shot using a Voigtlander Enos 2 1935 camera, absolutely a stunning folding camera, and it has just this wonderful classic look, especially when paired with a wonderful film like BWXX. So let's take a look at it. First though, if you have not subscribed to this channel, please subscribe. If you have, thank you very much. And if you can support us on Patreon, that would be great. Thank you in advance. So let's get back into the video though. So I'm looking at the first image here, and for those of you that watched yesterday's video, you realize you're looking at the same image again. And by the way, if you have not watched the first of these two videos on CineStill BwXX for stand development, and today in D96, you need to go back and watch that first video because some of the information in that 5-minute video is going to be important to have for today. So let's take a look at this image. There are a few people that asked me questions like, hey Steve, is there any way in stand development to get even a little more speed out of this particular film, or out of really any film in stand development? And the answer is yes. All the different stand development techniques that I've outlined here on Viva la Revolution 2.0, all are based around 45 minutes. Standing time. So yesterday, this image you're looking at is exposed at EI 400. CineStill BwXX natively is really a 200, 250 speed film, so it's a slight push. And then if you remember, I said yesterday at 45 minutes, this particular film developer combination has a usable exposure index from say 100 to 800. But what if I wanted a little more out of it? Is there anything that I can do? And the answer is yes. All you have to do is extend your time. Now there is a limit to where you're not going to be adding any more, but at 45 minutes, once again, with this particular film developer, it's 100 to 800. If you were to go an hour, maybe an hour and a half at most, you might be able to pick up a 1250 or a 16, but it would be a finish 1250 or 16, but it is possible. Or if you had accidentally overexposed this film at, let's say, an exposure index of 50, I would take that 45-minute development time and probably cut it down to like 30 minutes. So that's the way that I sort of normally work. 45 minutes is my standard, development time for stand, whether I'm using HC110 dilution G or whether I'm using DDX 1 to 9. 45 minutes sort of gives me that big range. But if I need a little more, I'll extend the time. If I need a little less, I'll pull that time back. And once again, you'll sort of learn, your technique for what you like with your film developer combinations. These are just my suggestions. Once again, like everything I say here on Viva la Revolution, you should test and verify everything that I say and make sure it fits your working style. But once again, if you look at this image from yesterday, it looks absolutely amazing. But one of the big things that I wanted to show you was what a difference D96 looks visually compared to Double X. I really like the way the D96 looks, and I was going for more of a push. I wanted to see what 1600 and what 3200, which is really the outer edges of this film, how it would look in D96. And yes, for those of you that are asking, you could push this film just automatically using DDX at 1 to 4 for a particular processing time. You absolutely could do that, but there is a different look and feel to D96. So let me pull up the first image right now. So here we are looking at D96 processed BWXX, and this is at an exposure index of 1600, and I think it looks fantastic. I love the contrast. I love the pop. I mean, it really has this just amazing feel to it. And the grain, if we zoom in on Eve's face, is really nice. Like, I don't see a whole lot of difference between the grain here and the grain in the DDX. They're both really, really controlling the grain of the film nice. But one thing that I will say is that if the just snap and pop of this image is very different in feeling from what you got from the stand development in the DDX. And this image scanned beautifully. There was no issue whatsoever in scanning. It just has a wonderful weight to it, a wonderful mid-tone. Now, granted, I'm pushing it to 1600, so it's automatically going to have more contrast, but what beautiful contrast. As a matter of fact, a lot of cinematographers, when they're working with BWXX, very rarely shoot it at its native ISO of 250 or 200. Most times people are pushing the film to 400 or 800 because they're liking that additional contrast that they're getting out of the file. So this is it at 1600. Let's take a look at 3200. And 3200 is exactly what you would expect. It's just a little less in the shadows, but wow, it looks amazing. Skin tone is beautiful, grain is nice. Once again, it's that classic salt and pepper that I talked about, but just the weight of the image, the contrast and the pop of the midtones really has such a great feeling to it that it said, once again, this is for me a real bread and butter film. So how did I process the film in D96? Let's get into the nuts and bolts. First off, there's two ways to use D96. You can use it as a stock developer, or you can use it one-to-one. I almost always use it one-to-one, but in this case, I did it in stock because I know most people use it in stock. So let's get into it in stock. Stock development time for 1600 is 25 minutes. So it's a 25-minute process. So it's a long time. You've got to have some good music playing in the background. And I did it with a really minimal agitation to where I did the initial 30 seconds. I obviously did my 1 minute or 2 minute pre-wet in the beginning that I always do. And then I did an initial 30 seconds, and then I did 10 seconds of agitation or 4 inversions every minute. So it was a really gentle agitation cycle, allowing the film to sit for 50 seconds between each cycle of agitation. And that produced just an absolutely glorious negative using this technique. Now, if I wanted to do one-to-one, which I do a lot, you have to add about 15 to 20% to your regular development time. So if my development time was 25 minutes, for stock, I would add 15 to 20% to that, and that would give me a development time for a one-to-one. And the development time for one-to-one at 25 minutes, I'm running into the other room right here, would be about 30 minutes long. So it's a real long development time one-to-one. So I know you're asking yourself, why would you do it one-to-one? Beyond the fact that I'm saving a little bit of developer, what's the advantage of that one-to-one? Well, the advantage is that I'm only using the developer as a single shot developer. Whenever you reuse a developer, which is what a lot of people do with D96, on the package that CineStill sells, I usually mix mine from scratch chemicals, but on the package it says that you can use up to 16 rolls of film per liter, and they want you to add 20 seconds per roll. That works perfectly if you're processing it, say, for 200, 250, or 400. But the moment you start really pushing the film, like 800, 1600, 3200, it starts to become trickier because that developer is losing some energy, and the additional time will help. But if you had a developer, that leader of developer that had used maybe 10 rolls of film, I probably wouldn't use that for a push. The developer energy just isn't there. So this is why I always, for the most part, use a one-to-one, because it's a single shot and then I'm going to dump. And when I'm doing it one-to-one, I'm doing it into my Jobo. So I'm using a very small quantity of developer to begin with. So it actually is very, very economical. If I was using this developer as a stock, I would make sure that if I was going to do a whole bunch of pushing, that I had fresh developer mixed up. I would not want to use a developer that's processed a whole bunch of film already. But if you don't want to get into all that, just do it one-to-one. But once again, you have to increase the development time by 15 to 20%. As I said, this is one of my favorite film developer combinations, D96. And once again, this time of year in Vermont, I'm needing this additional speed. It's getting dark early, and I'm finding that 800, 1600, 3200 really become a exposure index that I need for my work. So thank you very much for listening. Can't wait to hear your thoughts. Now go shoot some film.